She was trapped in the wheelchair until a millionaire disguised as a homeless man showed that. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The reflection in the mirror showed a 24-year-old woman whose green eyes no longer shone as before. Hannah adjusted the brown hair that fell over her shoulders while her tense hands gripped the edges of the wheelchair. The spacious room of the mansion, decorated with expensive furniture and silk curtains, seemed to suffocate her on that autumn morning. Through the window, she could see the abandoned garden, once her favorite refuge. The withered flowers and unkempt grass were a reflection of her own state of mind. It had been exactly 1 year since her life had changed drastically from that fateful day when a desperate impulse to save someone she loved resulted in the accident that left her in that condition. "Miss Hannah, it's time for physical therapy," announced Martha, the housekeeper, entering the room with soft steps. The middle-aged woman was one of the few people who still treated Hannah naturally, without that look of pity that bothered her so much. "I don't want to do it today, Martha," replied Hannah, turning the chair to face the housekeeper. "I'm tired of empty promises. Dr. Richard always says I'm progressing, but I don't feel any difference." Martha approached, placing a gentle hand on Hannah's shoulder. "Mr. Vincent won't like to hear that you're missing sessions again." The mention of Vincent's name made Hannah imperceptibly shrink. The owner of the mansion, a successful businessman in his 40s, had become her legal guardian after the accident. His authoritarian and controlling presence weighed on the house like a constant shadow. "Vincent doesn't need to know everything that happens in this house," retorted Hannah, guiding the chair toward the balcony. The fresh morning air touched her face, bringing with it the distant perfume of the few flowers that still resisted in the garden. Martha followed her, concerned. "He only wants what's best for you, child. Since your parents, well, since you've been alone, he's taken care of you as if you were family." Hannah let out a tired sigh. "Sometimes I wonder if all this concern doesn't hide something more, Martha. Vincent has changed so much since the accident. Or maybe I never noticed what he's really like." The housekeeper hesitated before responding, as if carefully choosing her words. "Mr. Vincent has his peculiar ways of showing affection, but I don't doubt that he's sincerely concerned about you." Hannah guided the chair to the edge of the balcony, her eyes fixed on the garden below. The rose bushes that her mother had loved so much were almost completely dry, except for a few stubborn buds that insisted on sprouting among the thorns. "You? No, Martha," began Hannah, her voice soft as a confession. "Sometimes I dream that I'm walking through that garden again. I can feel the grass under my feet, the wind on my legs. It's so real that when I wake up, the disappointment is even more painful." Martha approached, adjusting the shawl over Hannah's shoulders with maternal care. "Dreams are the way our hearts find not to give up, child. And while there are dreams, there is hope." A sudden movement in the garden caught Hannah's attention. Among the trees, a figure moved stealthily. A man with simple, worn clothes who seemed to observe the house with interest. "Martha, do you see that man in the garden?" asked Hannah, leaning forward in her chair. The housekeeper followed Hannah's gaze, but the garden was already empty again. "I don't see anyone, child. It must have been your imagination." Hannah continued staring at the spot where she had seen the mysterious figure, a strange sensation taking over her chest. Something about that man, even seen from afar, had awakened a curiosity that she hadn't felt in a long time. "Maybe you're right," agreed Hannah, although she knew it hadn't been imagination. "Martha, could you take me for a walk in the garden this afternoon?" The housekeeper smiled, surprised by the unusual request. "Of course, child. It's been so long since you've gone down to the garden. The fresh air will do you good." Hannah nodded, her eyes still fixed on the abandoned vegetation below. For the first time in a long time, she felt something different from the usual apathy that consumed her. It was as if that mysterious figure had planted a small seed of curiosity in her heart, a seed that, just like the few rosebuds that still resisted in the garden, was about to bloom. The afternoon arrived with a gentle breeze that made the leaves dance in the abandoned garden. Martha pushed Hannah's wheelchair along the moss-covered stone paths, while the autumn sun painted elongated, shadows on the ground. "Everything is so different," murmured Hannah, touching a dry leaf that fell into her lap. The garden, once an example of beauty and care, now more resembled a wild labyrinth. Vines had taken over the walls and bushes grew disorderly on all sides. After the accident, no one took proper care of it anymore," explained Martha, avoiding a low branch. "Mr. Vincent said he would hire a new gardener, but he never did." Hannah frowned, realizing how that abandonment seemed purposeful. "It's strange, isn't it? Vincent was always so meticulous about the property's appearance. Why would he leave the garden in this state?" Before Martha could answer, a movement among the trees caught Hannah's attention. It was him again, the man she had seen in the morning. This time, he was closer, and she could observe him better. Despite the worn clothes and unkempt appearance, there was something noble in his posture. His face, partially covered by a graying beard, displayed a serene smile that seemed directed especially at her. His eyes, of a deep blue, conveyed a wisdom that contrasted with his homeless appearance. "Martha, do you see him? It's the man I saw earlier today," exclaimed Hannah, pointing in the stranger's direction. The housekeeper stopped the wheelchair, looking around with concern. "I don't see anyone, child. Perhaps we should go back to the house." "No," protested Hannah with a firmness that surprised even herself. "Please let me stay a little longer. You can go, Martha. I'll be fine right here." "But Miss Hannah, Mr. Vincent—" "Vincent doesn't need to know," interrupted Hannah. "Please, Martha. It's been so long since I felt alive like this." The housekeeper hesitated, torn between concern and the desire to see Hannah showing some interest in the outside world again. "All right," she finally gave in, "but don't stay too long, and if you need anything, just call. I'll be in the kitchen, which has a view of this part of the garden." As soon as Martha walked away, the stranger emerged from the shadows of the trees. His walk was slow and deliberate, as if each step were a form of meditation. He approached until he was a few meters from Hannah, maintaining a respectful distance. "The roses," he said, his voice surprisingly melodious, "they still struggle to survive even when everything around them seems to conspire against their existence." Hannah observed the man with a mixture of fascination and caution. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" The stranger smiled, his eyes shining with a peculiar intensity. "Walls cannot contain nature, just as they cannot imprison hope. Your garden called to me, since, or perhaps it was your withered flowers, begging for care." "You speak in a different way," observed Hannah, tilting her head slightly. "You don't seem like an ordinary homeless person." "And you," he replied, "don't seem like someone who should be confined to that chair." The statement, said with such naturalness, made Hannah's heart race. "The doctors say I'll never walk again." "Doctors know the body," said the stranger, crouching to touch a withered rose, "but they often forget the soul. Do you know what I see when I look at you, Hannah?" She shuddered upon hearing her name. "How do you know my name?" "I see a dancer," he continued, ignoring the question. "Someone who used to float through this garden like a butterfly among the flowers. The body may have forgotten how to dance, but the soul, the soul never forgets." Hannah felt tears forming in her eyes. "Why are you saying these things?" The stranger approached one more step, and for the first time, Hannah noticed that his blue eyes seemed somehow familiar, like a distant memory she couldn't quite reach. "Because sometimes we need someone to remind us who we really are," he answered softly. "And I promise, Hannah, that you will dance again in this garden." A noise coming from the house made the stranger quickly retreat into the shadows. Hannah turned to see Martha coming in her direction, and when she looked again to where the man had been, he had disappeared. Dinner at the mansion proceeded in its usual oppressive silence. Vincent, seated at the head of the mahogany table, occasionally cast penetrating glances at Hannah, who barely touched her plate. The clinking of silverware echoed through the sumptuous environment, punctuated only by the sound of the antique clock on the wall. "Martha told me you spent the afternoon in the garden," commented Vincent, his seemingly casual tone hiding a note of uneasiness. "I thought you didn't like going there anymore." Hannah raised her eyes from her plate, studying the expression on her guardian's angular face. "The garden brings back memories," she replied cautiously. "Some good, others not so much." Vincent took a sip of red wine, his fingers lightly drumming on the crystal glass. "Memories can be dangerous, Hannah. Sometimes it's better to let them lie dormant." "Like memories of the accident?" she asked, surprising herself with her boldness. "It's interesting how I've never been able to recall exactly what happened that day." A muscle twitched in Vincent's jaw. The doctors explained that it's normal. Trauma sometimes blocks certain memories. It's a protective mechanism of the brain. "And you were there, weren't you, on the day of the accident?" Vincent set down his glass with more force than necessary, making the wine dangerously ripple near the edge. "Why this sudden interest in the past, Hannah? I thought we had agreed to focus on the future, on your recovery." "What recovery, Vincent? You've kept the same doctors for a year knowing they can't get results. The garden is abandoned, visitors are discouraged, and you control every aspect of my life as if I were a prisoner." The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Vincent wiped his lips with the linen napkin, his movements meticulously controlled. "Everything I do is for your own good, Hannah. You seem different today. Did something happen in the garden that I should know about?" Hannah thought of the stranger, his enigmatic blue eyes and words that seemed to awaken something dormant in her soul. "No," she lied, feeling a strange satisfaction in keeping that secret. "I'm just tired of the same routine." "I see," said Vincent, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Perhaps it's time to consider that experimental treatment I mentioned. Some time away from here might do you good." "I'm not going anywhere," declared Hannah firmly. "This is the only home I know." Vincent stood up, his tall figure casting a shadow over the table. "Sometimes, Hannah, we need to make difficult decisions for the good of those we love. You are my responsibility now, and I won't allow anything or anyone to interfere with your well-being." After dinner, in her room, Hannah couldn't sleep. Vincent's words echoed in her mind, mixing with those of the garden stranger. She rolled to her side, observing the full moon through the window when a subtle movement caught her attention. In the garden, a figure moved among the shadows. Hannah propped herself up on her elbows, her heart racing as she recognized the stranger. He seemed to be doing something to the rose bushes, planting or pruning she couldn't distinguish in the dim light. With a sudden impulse, Hannah dragged herself to her wheelchair. The process was difficult and painful, but she had learned to manage on her own in emergencies. Silently, she opened her bedroom door and slid down the dark corridor to the private elevator that Vincent had installed after the accident. The garden was bathed in silver light when she emerged through the back door. The night air carried a different fragrance, something new, fresh, like newly turned soil and blossoming petals. "I knew you would come," said the stranger without turning, continuing his work on the rose bushes. "Curiosity is the first step toward change." Hannah approached, noticing that he had planted new rosebuds among the old ones. "How did you get the seedlings?" "Some were already here, dormant under the earth. Others I brought." "Flowers are like people, Hannah. Sometimes they just need someone who believes in their potential to bloom." "Why are you doing this?" The stranger finally turned to face her, his face partially illuminated by the moon. "Because every garden deserves a chance to be reborn, and every person deserves the chance to rediscover their own strength." Hannah felt a shiver run down her spine. "You talk as if you know me." "Perhaps I do," he answered enigmatically. "Or perhaps I simply recognize an imprisoned soul when I see one. Tomorrow, if you come to the garden at sunrise, we'll begin your true healing process. How can I trust you? I don't even know your name." The stranger smiled, and for a moment, Hannah had the impression she had seen that same smile before, at another time in another life. "Some call me Gabriel, but names are just labels we use to simplify mysteries we don't understand. What matters isn't who I am, but who you can become." The sun had barely begun to gild the horizon when Hannah arrived at the garden. The morning dew sparkled like diamonds on the leaves, and a gentle fragrance hung in the air. The new roses, planted by Gabriel, were beginning to awaken. "You came," he said, emerging from the morning mist as if he were part of it. His worn clothes seemed less shabby in the dawn light, and there was a dignity in his posture that intrigued Hannah more and more. "How could I not come?" she replied, adjusting the shawl over her shoulders. "You planted hope in my garden last night." Gabriel smiled, approaching the wheelchair. "What do you feel when you look at these roses, Hannah?" She observed the buds that were beginning to open, delicate and resilient. "I feel longing, for when I could walk among them, smell their fragrance up close, care for them with my own hands." "Close your eyes," Gabriel gently instructed. "Imagine that your legs are like these roses, dormant but not lifeless. Within you exists the same strength that makes a bud break through the earth and seek the sun." Hannah closed her eyes, allowing herself to be enveloped by Gabriel's serene voice. "The doctors say there's no feeling below the waist. Doctors treat the physical body, but there's a deeper connection between mind and matter, a connection that traditional medicine doesn't yet fully understand." Gabriel knelt beside the chair. "May I?" Hannah nodded, and he gently touched her feet through her shoes. "Focus on this point. Don't try to feel, just observe, as if you were watching a rosebud opening. There's no rush, no expectation, just awareness." For several minutes they remained in silence. Hannah kept her eyes closed, her breathing becoming deeper and more regular. Suddenly, she gasped. I felt something, like a very slight tingling, almost imperceptible." "Don't cling to the sensation," Gabriel guided. "Let it flow like the breeze among the flowers. Your body is relearning the language of movement, rediscovering long-forgotten pathways." A noise from the house made Gabriel quickly move away. Hannah opened her eyes in time to see Martha coming out the back door. "Miss Hannah, what are you doing here so early and alone?" The housekeeper hurried in her direction, casting suspicious glances to the corners of the garden. "I wanted to see the sunrise, Martha," replied Hannah, noticing that Gabriel had completely disappeared. "And look, the roses are coming back to life." Martha stopped, observing with amazement the new buds that weren't there the day before. "How is this possible? Who could have—" "Sometimes," interrupted Hannah, a small smile playing on her lips, "miracles happen when we least expect them." Throughout the day, Hannah couldn't stop thinking about the sensation she had experienced during the exercise with Gabriel. It was as if a long-closed door had been left ajar, allowing a beam of light to penetrate the darkness. During the physical therapy session, she surprised Dr. Richard by reporting the tingling in her feet. "Interesting," murmured the doctor, making notes on his clipboard. "It could be a sign that some nerve connections are regenerating, but we shouldn't create premature expectations." "Doctor," Hannah hesitated before continuing, "have you heard about alternative recovery techniques, something related to visualization and body awareness?" The doctor frowned. "There is some research in that area, but nothing conclusive. Why the sudden interest?" "Curiosity," she replied vaguely. "Sometimes I think we could try different approaches. I need to remind you that your treatment was carefully planned by Mr. Vincent. Any changes would need to be discussed with him first." Hannah nodded, but a new determination was beginning to grow within her. For the first time in a year, she felt she had some control over her destiny. Gabriel's words echoed in her mind, mixing with fragmented memories that seemed to want to emerge from the depths of her consciousness. That night, as she watched the garden from her window, Hannah saw Gabriel again among the rose bushes. He raised his eyes, meeting her gaze, and made a small gesture with his head, a silent promise that he would be there the next morning, ready to continue his work of awakening not only the roses, but also the hope that Hannah thought lost forever. The Sewell library of the mansion was bathed in the dusk's half-light when Vincent entered, finding Hannah absorbed in an old photo album. She was passing her fingers delicately over the images, as if she could touch the past through them. "I didn't know you still kept these photos," commented Vincent, his voice causing Hannah to start. He approached, looking over her shoulder at one particular photograph, Hannah as a child, smiling amid the rose bushes in the garden. "I found the album this morning while Martha was organizing some old boxes," she responded, noticing how Vincent seemed tense as he examined the images. "It's strange. There are so many photos that I don't remember taking. Vincent extended his hand, gently closing the album. "The past is like a poorly tended garden, Hannah. The more you dig, the more thorns you find." "Why do you always do that?" questioned Hannah, her voice gaining an unusual firmness. "Why do you try to keep me away from anything that might awaken my memories?" "I'm just protecting you," he answered, but there was something in his eyes that betrayed uneasiness. "Your recovery should focus on the future, not on reopening old wounds. And what if the answers I'm looking for are precisely in those memories? Since the accident, I feel as if part of my life has been erased." Vincent walked to the window, his silhouette outlined against the orange sky. "Sometimes, Hannah, forgetfulness is a blessing. Not all truths need to be revealed." At that moment, Martha hurriedly entered the library. "Mr. Vincent, phone call for you. It's Dr. Richard. He says it's urgent." Vincent cast one last penetrating look at Hannah before leaving. As soon as she was alone, she reopened the album, her eyes scanning the photographs with new attention. There was something familiar about the gardens in those old images, something that went beyond the rose bushes and stone paths. "Looking for answers?" Gabriel's soft voice surprised her. He was standing near the bookshelf, as if he had materialized. "From the shadows, how did you get in here?" whispered Hannah, both startled and relieved by his presence. "This house holds many secrets, as do you," he replied, approaching to look at the album. "Some doors were never really closed, just forgotten." Hannah watched as he gently turned the pages of the album. "There's something in your eyes," she murmured, "something that makes me feel I should recognize you." Gabriel smiled enigmatically. "Memories are like the flowers in your garden, Hannah. Some seem to have disappeared, but their roots remain alive under the earth, waiting for the right moment to sprout again." "This morning," said Hannah, lowering her voice even more, "during our exercise in the garden, I had a flash of memory. It was snowing, and someone was teaching me how to make snow angels. That person's eyes were blue like yours." Gabriel remained motionless for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Continue exploring these memories, Hannah, but be cautious. There are people who prefer certain secrets to remain buried." "Like Vincent," she completed. "Sometimes I think he knows more about my accident than he tells, and there's something about his behavior lately. It's as if he feels he's losing control." "Vincent is a man accustomed to controlling everything and everyone around him," observed Gabriel. "But there are forces that even he cannot contain, like the force of a truth that insists on coming to light." Footsteps in the corridor made Gabriel move quickly toward a side door. Before disappearing, he turned to Hannah. "Continue with the exercises I taught you. Your body is beginning to awaken, as are your memories. And Hannah, be careful with the album. There are answers in it that could change everything." As soon as Gabriel left, Vincent returned to the library, his face tense after the phone call. "Dr. Richard reported that you mentioned sensations in your legs," he said, studying her carefully. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't think it was important," replied Hannah, discreetly closing the album. "You always say I shouldn't create false hopes." "I want us to do some additional tests," declared Vincent. "I'm going to schedule an appointment with a specialist in New York for next week." "I don't want to go to New York," protested Hannah. "I'm making progress here with my current treatment." Vincent approached, placing his hands on her shoulders in a gesture that seemed more possessive than protective. "This isn't a request, Hannah. It's a decision already made. Sometimes we need to be firm with those we love for their own good." As Vincent spoke, Hannah noticed something fallen near the side door, a small old photo that must have slipped from the album when Gabriel left hurriedly. Her heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral, knowing that image might contain some of the answers she had been searching for. That night, after making sure everyone was asleep, Hannah silently wheeled her chair to the library. The photograph that had fallen earlier was still there, partially hidden under an antique piece of furniture. With some effort, she managed to reach it. In the moonlight coming through the window, Hannah examined the image, yellowed by time. Her heart almost stopped when she recognized the scene. It was her, approximately 12 years old, sitting on a bench in the garden. Next to her was a young man with incredibly blue eyes and a gentle smile. Wearing elegant, well-kept clothes, he looked like a younger and more prosperous version of Gabriel. "Impossible," she murmured, her fingers trembling as she touched the photograph. The date printed in the lower corner indicated that the photo had been taken 12 years ago. On the back there was a half-erased inscription, "Hannah and Tyler, Garden Promise." A sudden noise made her quickly pocket the photo in her robe. Martha appeared at the door, still in her nightclothes. "Child, what are you doing awake at this hour?" asked the concerned housekeeper. "I couldn't sleep, Martha," replied Hannah, trying to control the agitation in her voice. "Do you remember anyone named Tyler?" Martha became visibly tense. "Tyler is a name I haven't heard in a long time. Why do you ask?" "So you knew him. Who was he, Martha?" The housekeeper approached, closing the library door behind her. "Some questions are dangerous, child, especially in this house." "Please, Martha," insisted Hannah. "I need to know. I have a feeling he has something to do with my past. With the accident?" Martha sighed deeply, sitting in a nearby armchair. "Tyler was different. A good man who used to visit your family frequently. He had a special gift with plants. He was the one who taught your mother how to care for the rose bushes." "And what happened to him?" "There was a disagreement with Mr. Vincent," replied Martha, choosing her words carefully. "Soon after, Tyler disappeared. No one heard from him again. It was around the time when your parents—" She stopped, as if she had said too much. Hannah felt a shiver run down her spine. "Martha, do you think Vincent had something to do with Tyler's disappearance?" "You shouldn't ask that kind of question, child," warned Martha, rising nervously. "Mr. Vincent has eyes and ears everywhere. Come, it's time to go back to bed." Later in her room, Hannah couldn't get the photograph out of her head. The similarities between Tyler and Gabriel were too striking to be coincidence. And there was something else, a growing feeling that her lost memories were somehow connected to him. Turning in bed, she observed the garden through the window. A solitary figure walked among the rose bushes. Gabriel, or was it Tyler, tending to the flowers under the moonlight. As she watched him, a sudden and vivid memory hit her. She was 12 years old and Tyler was teaching her about the cycle of roses. "See how they sleep in winter?" he said. "But they're not really asleep. They're just waiting for the right moment to awaken, like some truths in our lives." Hannah blinked and the memory dissipated like mist in the sun. But something had changed within her, a growing certainty that Gabriel and Tyler were the same person, and that his return was connected not only to her recovery, but with long-buried secrets in the history of that mansion. From outside, as if sensing he was being watched, the man in the garden raised his eyes to her window. Even at a distance, Hannah could see the familiar gleam of those blue eyes, eyes that seemed to carry the weight of many unspoken truths, waiting for the right moment to bloom, like the roses he so carefully cultivated. Dawn brought a fine drizzle that covered the garden with a silvery mist. Hannah was in her usual place for the morning exercises with Gabriel, but this time her heart was beating faster. The photograph in her robe pocket weighed like lead. "You seem restless today," observed Gabriel, kneeling beside her chair. "The roses can sense when something disturbs us." Hannah removed the photograph from her pocket with trembling hands. "I think it's time we were honest with each other. Tyler." Gabriel's face remained impassive, but something changed in his eyes. A shadow of recognition, perhaps of pain. He took the photograph delicately, his fingers lightly brushing the yellowed surface. "Some truths are like deeply buried seeds," he finally said. "They need the right moment to germinate. Why didn't you tell me? Why all this mystery?" Gabriel, or Tyler, sat on a nearby bench, still contemplating the photograph. "Because your memories needed to awaken naturally, Hannah, like these roses which cannot be forced to bloom before their time." "Martha told me about your disagreement with Vincent," pressed Hannah. "What really happened?" "Vincent has always been a man obsessed with control," he answered, his voice carrying an old sadness. "When your parents entrusted me with certain documents, he saw it as a threat to his power over the family." Hannah felt a tingling in her legs, not from Gabriel's techniques this time, but from the pure adrenaline of revelation. "What documents?" Papers that would prove Vincent had no legal right to this property. Your father suspected his intentions and secretly changed his will. I was the custodian of that information. And then you disappeared, completed Hannah, pieces of the puzzle beginning to fit in her mind. Vincent gave me an ultimatum, continued Tyler. If I didn't hand over the documents and disappear, he threatened to harm the people I cared about most, including you, Hannah. A sudden memory flashed through Hannah's mind. She, younger, running through the garden while Tyler taught her the names of the flowers. The happiness of that moment was so pure, so real that it hurt. But why come back now? Why like this? Tyler stood up, walking to a nearby rose bush. Because I heard about your accident, and something about that story didn't make sense. Vincent claimed you lost control of the car trying to avoid an animal on the road, but what? Insisted Hannah, leaning forward in her chair. But you were an extremely careful driver, and that road, it was a path you knew like the back of your hand. Moreover, the brake marks on the asphalt indicated that something or someone had forced your car off the road. Hannah felt her blood turn cold. Are you suggesting it wasn't an accident? I'm suggesting there's more to this story than Vincent wants you to believe. The night before the accident, you called me, Hannah. You said you had discovered something about Vincent, something that would compromise him. But before you could tell me, the call dropped. The next day I received news of your accident. Tears began to roll down Hannah's face. Why can't I remember? Why do these memories seem blocked? Tyler knelt again at her side, taking her hands in his. Because some truths are so painful that our mind buries them deeply. But just like these roses that are coming back to life, your memories are also awakening. And with them, your inner strength. At that moment, Hannah felt something different in her legs. Not just a tingling, but a more defined sensation, as if muscles long dormant were beginning to awaken. Tyler, I can feel my legs. It's stronger than before. A smile illuminated his face. Your body never forgot how to move. Hannah, it just needed time and the right stimulus to rediscover the way. As I said at the beginning, you will dance in this garden again. The sound of footsteps in the house made Tyler quickly move away. Vincent can't know I've recovered my identity, he whispered. Not yet. Continue with the exercises. Keep hope alive. And Hannah, be careful. Vincent may seem protective, but there is darkness in his heart. As Tyler disappeared among the trees, Hannah looked at the photograph in her hands. The image from the past now carried a new meaning. It wasn't just a memory, but a clue to unravel the mysteries surrounding her life. And for the first time in a long time, she felt not only hope, but determination. Determination to discover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The news that Hannah had recovered some feeling in her legs spread quickly through the mansion. Dr. Richard conducted more tests than usual, while Vincent observed everything with an interest that bordered on obsession. It's truly remarkable, commented the doctor, making notes on his clipboard. Neural regeneration doesn't usually occur this way, especially after so much time. Hannah remained silent, thinking about how Tyler's techniques had achieved in weeks what a year of conventional treatment had not. Her gaze met Vincent's, who was leaning against the doorframe, and she noticed something different in his expression. It wasn't joy for her recovery, but something closer to fear. Perhaps it's time to consider new treatment methods, suggested Dr. Richard. There are alternative therapies that... No, Vincent abruptly interrupted. We'll maintain the current treatment. In fact, I've already arranged for Hannah's transfer to a specialized clinic in New York. What? Protested Hannah. I'm not going anywhere. I'm making progress here for the first time in months. Precisely why, replied Vincent, his voice controlled but firm. We need a better equipped team to handle your recovery. After the doctor left, Hannah confronted Vincent. Why this rush to get me out of here? What are you trying to hide? Vincent approached slowly, his eyes fixed on hers. You've been different, Hannah, asking questions about the past, wandering the garden at odd hours. It concerns me. What concerns me is how you try to control every aspect of my life, she retorted. Why do you never talk about the night of the accident? Why have you blocked all my attempts to investigate what really happened? A muscle twitched in Vincent's jaw. You're letting your imagination create conspiracy theories. The accident was exactly what I said. A tragedy caused by an animal on the road. And the documents my father left? The ones proving you had no right to this property? Vincent visibly paled. Where did you hear that? So it's true, pressed Hannah. What else are you hiding, Vincent? He quickly composed himself, his expression returning to the usual mask of control. You're confused, Hannah. These stories about documents, they're just delusions. Perhaps the trauma of the accident affected more than just your legs. Or perhaps I'm finally beginning to see the truth, she replied, holding his gaze. Vincent leaned over the wheelchair, his hands gripping the armrests. Listen carefully, Hannah. You're going to New York whether you want to or not. It's for your own good. At that moment, Martha hurriedly entered the room. Mr. Vincent, there's an urgent call in the office. It's about that investigation you requested. Vincent straightened up, casting one last warning look at Hannah before leaving. As soon as they were alone, Martha approached, speaking in whispers. Child, I need to tell you something. I overheard Mr. Vincent on the phone last night. He's hired private investigators to search the property. I think he's looking for someone. Hannah's heart raced. Tyler was in danger. Martha, I need your help. You've always cared for me like a mother. Please, help me protect someone very important. The housekeeper hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Whatever you need, child. I've seen too much in this house to remain silent. Hannah took the old photograph and showed it to Martha. I need you to hide this in a safe place, and there's one more thing. She lowered her voice even more, sharing her plan with the housekeeper. At night, while the mansion slept, Hannah watched the garden from her window. Tyler's roses continued to bloom, defying the darkness with their resilient beauty. Like her, they were awakening from a long sleep, regaining their strength. And like them, Hannah was determined to break the bonds that held her, no matter how much Vincent tried to prevent it. The library of the mansion held more secrets than Hannah had imagined. With Martha's help, she searched through old folders and documents while Vincent was at a business meeting in town. The housekeeper stood guard at the door, alert to any suspicious movement. Look at this, whispered Hannah, removing a dusty folder from a locked drawer that Martha had managed to open. These are my father's documents, contracts, deeds. Her hands trembled as she leafed through the yellowed papers. Suddenly something caught her attention, a letter dated a few days before the accident. It was her father's handwriting addressed to Tyler. My dear friend Tyler, if you're reading this letter, it means I've found my way back to the light, even through the densest shadows. Tyler promised me he would take care of you, that he would help you rediscover your strength when the time was right. This garden was always more than a place of beauty. It's a testament that life finds its way even in the most adverse circumstances. Like the roses your mother loved so much, you too have blossomed through the thorns. The diary that accompanies this letter contains all the secrets of the garden, not just about the roses, but about the art of cultivating hope. Use it to continue the work that has begun. Transform this place into a beacon of light for others who, like you, need to rediscover their own healing power. We're proud of you, my daughter. We always have been. With eternal love, Dad. Hannah felt tears in her eyes. Martha, my father knew. He knew Vincent was dangerous. A noise in the corridor made them both freeze. Martha peeked through the door crack. It's just the new gardener that Mr. Vincent hired, she whispered, relieved. New gardener? Hannah frowned. Since when? Since this morning. Mr. Vincent said we needed someone to clean up the garden, pull out the roses that recently sprouted. Hannah's heart raced. He's trying to destroy Tyler's work. Martha, I need to warn him. But child, how? Mr. Vincent has guards watching the garden at night. Hannah looked at her legs. In recent weeks, the exercises with Tyler had provided significant progress. She could feel more sensation and even slightly move her toes. I have an idea, she said, carefully putting the letter back in the folder. But I'll need your help, Martha. And we also need to find those original documents my father mentioned." "The first roses of spring," murmured Martha thoughtfully. "I remember your father had a special flower bed near the old well." "That's where the roses always bloomed first." Hannah nodded, a plan beginning to form in her mind. "Tonight, when everyone is asleep." Her sentence was interrupted by firm footsteps in the corridor. Vincent had returned earlier than expected. Martha quickly put away the folder and helped. Hannah positioned the chair naturally, seconds before the door opened. "What are you doing here?" asked Vincent, his penetrating gaze sweeping the room. "Miss Hannah wanted some books to read," Martha promptly replied. "Since she'll be spending a few days in New York." "Ah, yes, about that," Vincent approached Hannah's chair. "I've decided to move up your trip. We'll leave early tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Hannah couldn't hide her surprise. "But that's so sudden." "Everything's already arranged," said Vincent with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The clinic is prepared to receive you. It will be better this way, Hannah, away from the unwanted distractions." At that moment, a sound of argument came from the garden. Hannah recognized Tyler's voice, apparently confronting the new gardener. Vincent quickly went to the window. His face hardened when he saw the scene below. "Martha, call security. We have an intruder on the property." "No!" exclaimed Hannah, but it was too late. Vincent had already left the library with large strides. Martha rushed to the window. "Child, he's going to catch Tyler. What do we do?" Hannah felt a fierce determination grow inside her. The words of her father's letter echoed in her mind. She was the true heir. This was her house, her garden, her story. "Martha, help me get down to the garden. Now." "But child, it's dangerous." "Mr. Vincent." "Vincent has no more power over me," declared Hannah, her voice firm. "It's time to face the truth, no matter the cost." As Martha helped her leave the library, Hannah could hear the confusion growing in the garden. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in orange tones, the same sky that had witnessed so many secrets on that property. It was time for all those secrets to come to light. The garden had been transformed into a silent battlefield. Tyler was surrounded by 3 security guards, while the new gardener ruthlessly pulled up the roses he had planted with such care. Vincent observed the scene from the top of the garden stairs, a cold smile on his lips. "Finally decided to show your true face, Tyler," said Vincent, descending the steps slowly. "Or should I say, Mr. Tyler Anderson, the late Andrew's former partner?" Martha pushed Hannah's chair along the side path of the garden, keeping to the shadows of the trees. Hannah's heart was racing, not just from the tension of the moment, but also because, for the first time in a long time, she could distinctly feel her thigh muscle contracting, as if her body were responding to the urgency of the situation. "You always knew who I was, Vincent," replied Tyler, maintaining his dignity despite the situation. "Just as you always knew you had no legal right to this property." "Legal rights are just papers," scoffed Vincent. "What matters is who has the real power, and at this moment, I'm the one who controls everything." "Not everything," said Hannah, making her presence known. All eyes turned to her as Martha pushed her chair to the central clearing of the garden. Vincent seemed momentarily disconcerted. "Hannah, go back inside. This isn't your concern." "On the contrary," she retorted, her voice firm. "This is exactly my concern. This is my house, my inheritance. And you, Vincent, are nothing but a usurper." "Be careful with your words, dear," warned Vincent, his voice now loaded with threat. "You're still fragile from the accident. You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," replied Hannah. "Just as I know you had a hand in my accident. I discovered something that night, didn't I? Something that threatened your control over all this." Tyler tried to take a step towards Hannah, but the guards restrained him. "Hannah, be careful." "Let him go," Hannah ordered the guards. "This property belongs to me, and Tyler is my guest." To everyone's surprise, the men hesitated, looking uncertainly between Hannah and Vincent. Years of loyalty to the original family of the mansion seemed to weigh more than Vincent's recent orders. "You work for me," roared Vincent, losing his composure. "No, Vincent," intervened Martha, stepping forward. "They work for the Miller family, always have, and Hannah is the last of the Millers. Vincent pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small golden key. Without this, you are nothing. The key to the safe where all the property documents are kept, all the deeds? Fake documents, declared Tyler, taking advantage of the guard's distraction to free himself. The originals are well guarded, Vincent. They always have been. Hannah felt an intense tingling in her legs. Tyler's techniques, combined with the adrenaline of the moment, seemed to awaken every dormant nerve in her body. Supporting herself on the arms of the chair, she did something that surprised everyone. She began to stand up. "Hannah, no!" shouted Vincent, but it was too late. With trembling legs leaning on Martha, Hannah stood for the first time in a year. "It's over, Vincent. The roses aren't the only things you failed to control in this garden." Vincent's face contorted into a mask of fury. He advanced toward Hannah, but Tyler was quicker, placing himself between them. The guards, seeing their employer's true nature, also moved to protect Hannah. "The original documents," said Hannah, her voice loaded with certainty, "are exactly where my father left them. In the place where the first roses bloom in spring." Vincent's eyes widened in understanding. He turned and began to run toward the old well, but his feet got tangled in the rose bushes he himself had ordered pulled up. The petals flew in the wind as he fell, the golden key escaping from his fingers and rolling away, lost among the flowers he had so despised. Twilight tinted the sky purple as the scene in the garden unfolded like a surreal spectacle. Vincent, still on the ground, stared desperately at the key lost among the flowers. Hannah, supported by Tyler and Martha, remained standing, her muscles trembling with the effort, but her determination unwavering. "The security guards are no longer your allies, Vincent," said Hannah, her voice gaining strength with each word. "Just as this house was never really yours." Martha hurried to bring the wheelchair closer, allowing Hannah to sit again, exhausted but triumphant from the moment of autonomy she had just achieved. "You don't understand," Vincent stood up, trying to regain his composure, though his eyes continued to scan the ground, searching for the key. "Everything I did was to protect you, to maintain this property." "To maintain power," interrupted Tyler. "You forged documents, manipulated people, and when that wasn't enough, you tried to silence me," completed Hannah, a sudden memory exploding in her mind like lightning. "On the night of the accident, I was going to meet Tyler. I had discovered your fake documents in the office." Vincent visibly paled. "You can't prove anything." "But I can." A new voice emerged from the side corridor of the garden. Dr. Richard emerged from the shadows holding a folder. "I always found it strange how you insisted on keeping Hannah isolated, how you obsessively controlled her treatment. So I began to investigate." The doctor approached, handing the folder to Hannah. "These are the original reports from the accident, the impact marks on the car, the position of the damage. Everything indicates that another vehicle forced you off the road. And there are witnesses, Hannah, people who saw a black car following yours that night. The same model Vincent drove at the time," added Tyler. Hannah leafed through the documents, her hands trembling. "Why, Vincent? Why do all this?" "Your father was going to destroy me," exploded Vincent, his facade of control finally crumbling. "He discovered the money diversions, the properties I had put in my name. He was going to report me, ruin me. I couldn't allow it." "So you decided to get rid of him?" Hannah's voice was loaded with pain and disbelief. "He had a sudden illness, it was natural." Vincent tried to argue, but his voice faltered. "Natural like my accident?" cut Hannah, tears of anger rolling down her face. "Like the threats to Tyler? Like the years you stole from my life?" At that moment, one of the security guards approached, handing something to Hannah, the golden key Vincent had lost. "Miss, we found this among the rose bushes." Hannah held the key, feeling its familiar weight. "Martha, do you remember where my father's old safe was?" The housekeeper nodded. "Behind the painting in the library, miss, the one depicting the garden in full spring." "No!" Vincent tried to advance, but the guards restrained him. "You can't do this. I built all this. I kept this property running." "You destroyed lives," corrected Tyler, his voice carrying a dangerous calm, "manipulated, lied, and almost took from Hannah not just her inheritance but her ability to walk. Hannah looked at the rose bushes around her, some torn up by Vincent's anger, others defiantly blooming. "Take him away," she ordered the guards. "The police should be on their way. Dr. Richard took care of that, didn't he?" The doctor nodded. "As soon as I gathered all the evidence, they should arrive any moment." As the guards led Vincent away, still protesting and threatening, Hannah turned to Tyler. "All this time you were preparing me not just to walk again, but to face the truth." Tyler knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "You always had the necessary strength, Hannah. I just helped awaken it as we did with these roses." The sound of sirens began to echo in the distance, approaching the mansion. The sky was now completely dark, but the garden lights illuminated the rose bushes, their petals dancing gently in the night breeze. It was as if nature itself were celebrating the triumph of truth over the shadows that had for so long dominated that place. In the library of the mansion, in the soft light of the lamps, Hannah held the documents found in her father's safe. The portrait of the garden in spring, which for years had guarded that secret, now seemed to smile at her like a silent accomplice in her victory. "These are the original deeds," confirmed Tyler, examining the papers. "Your father was very clever in hiding a copy here, while keeping the originals near the well. He knew Vincent would search the most obvious place first." Hannah nodded, running her fingers over her father's signature. "He tried to protect us until the end. He knew something might happen." Martha served tea for everyone, her hands still trembling slightly after the night's events. "The sheriff said he'll return tomorrow to take our formal statements. Vincent will remain in custody until the trial. And this time," added Dr. Richard, "he won't be able to use his money and influence to escape. The evidence is irrefutable." Tyler approached the window, observing the police cars leaving the property. "We can finally breathe in peace, and you, Hannah, can focus fully on your recovery." "I'm already recovering," she smiled, slightly moving her toes. "Each day I feel more strength, more control. It's as if my body were awakening along with the truth." "Your techniques are impressive." "Tyler," commented Dr. Richard, "I'd like to learn more about them. They could help other patients." "The technique is just one part," replied Tyler, turning to the group. "The most important thing is awakening each person's inner strength. Hannah always had the ability to walk again. Her body just needed to rediscover the way, just as her mind needed to rediscover the truth." Hannah closed the folder with the documents, a decision forming in her mind. "I want to transform part of the mansion into a rehabilitation center," she announced. "A place where people who have lost hope can find it again, just as happened to me." "That's a wonderful idea," approved Martha, her eyes shining with pride. "And the garden," continued Hannah, "will be the heart of this project. The roses that Tyler brought back to life will be a symbol of renewal for everyone who comes here." Tyler knelt beside her chair, his blue eyes conveying a mixture of admiration and affection. "You always had a generous heart, Hannah. Even in the most difficult moments, you never lost your essence." "It's because I had special people by my side," she replied, looking gratefully at each face in the room. Martha, who was more than a housekeeper, was a second mother. Dr. Richard, who never gave up looking for the truth. And you, Tyler. Her words were interrupted by a familiar sound, a bird singing in the garden, announcing the dawn. The night of revelations was coming to an end, giving way to a new day full of possibilities. "The sun is rising," observed Tyler, extending his hand to Hannah. "Would you like to try taking a few steps to greet the day?" Hannah accepted his hand, feeling the strength and support it offered. With Tyler and Martha's help, she rose from the chair. Her steps were still uncertain, but increasingly firm. Together, they walked slowly to the veranda. The garden stretched before them, the rose bushes swaying gently in the morning breeze. Some flowers had been torn up in the previous nights. Confusion, but Hannah knew that, like her, they would come back stronger. "You know," she said, leaning on the veranda's railing, "when you first appeared that day dressed as a homeless man, I thought I was seeing a ghost from the past. In a way, I was, a ghost of happier times, returning to awaken not just the roses, but also my memories and my strength." Tyler smiled. his face illuminated by the first rays of sun. Sometimes we need to lose everything to rediscover who we really are. You didn't just lose the ability to walk, Hannah. You lost your history, your identity. But now I'm whole again, she completed, watching the sunrise paint the sky in rosy hues. And this garden will witness many other stories of rebirth. The following weeks brought significant changes to the mansion. Autumn gave way to winter, but the garden, under Tyler's dedicated care, maintained its vitality. Hannah progressed in her recovery, growing stronger each day, each step more firm. Keep your focus on your center, Tyler guided during one of their morning sessions in the garden. Feel the energy flowing from the roots of your feet to the top of your head. Hannah was standing, leaning only slightly on a decorative cane that had belonged to her grandmother. Her legs, once inert, now responded with increasing precision to her brain's commands. The morning dew moistened her bare feet, creating a direct connection with the earth beneath them. "It's amazing," commented Dr. Richard, who observed the session with professional interest. "In all my years of medicine, I've never seen such a remarkable recovery." "That's because you've always focused only on the physical body, Doctor," replied Tyler, gently adjusting Hannah's posture. "But true healing involves much more than muscles and nerves." Hannah took a few more steps, feeling the strength growing in her legs. "It's as if every part of my body were awakening from a long sleep, not just the legs, but also the memories, the sensations." Martha approached the group, bringing a tray with tea and cookies. The lawyer called. "Child," he said, "all the documents are in order. The transfer of the property to your name will be formalized this week." "And Vincent?" asked Hannah, returning to sit on a garden bench. "He'll remain in custody until the trial," answered Tyler. "The evidence is solid, and several other people harmed by him have begun to come forward." Hannah nodded, taking a sip of the tea Martha had served. Her gaze wandered over the garden, where small groups of workers were renovating the old annex of the mansion, the future rehabilitation center she planned to inaugurate. "We already have 3 physical therapists interested in working at the center," commented Dr. Richard, all fascinated with the idea of combining conventional techniques with Tyler's alternative methods. "And we've already received 10 patient registrations," added Martha proudly. "The news has spread quickly." Tyler smiled, observing Hannah with admiration. "You're transforming your pain into hope for others. There's no more powerful cure than that." "I learned from the roses," replied Hannah, pointing to the buds that continued to bloom, defying the cold of the approaching winter. "Even in the most adverse conditions, life finds a way to sprout again." A group of birds landed near them, attracted by the cookie crumbs that had fallen to the ground. Hannah observed how they moved without fear, as if they sensed the peace that now emanated from that place. "I remember the first time I saw you in the garden," she said to Tyler. "You looked like a homeless man, but your eyes carried a wisdom that intrigued me from the first moment." "I needed to approach without arousing suspicion," he explained. "Vincent had eyes everywhere. If he had known who I was from, the beginning, he would have tried to drive you away as he did in the past," completed Hannah. "But this time was different. This time, we were all stronger." Dr. Richard checked his watch. "I need to go. I have a meeting with the team that will work at the center. Hannah, would you like to come with me? Your perspective as a patient would be valuable." Hannah rose from the bench, leaning on her cane. "Sure. Actually, I'd like to walk there. It's only 100 yards to the annex, and each step is a small victory." Tyler positioned himself at her side, not to support her, but as a reassuring presence. "True strength isn't in not needing help," he said softly, "but in knowing how to accept support when necessary." Together, they began to walk along the stone path that led to the annex. The workers paused in their work to greet Hannah, many of them former employees who had known her since childhood and had witnessed her journey of recovery. "You know what makes me happiest?" commented Hannah, stopping a moment to catch her breath. "It's not just regaining my movements, but seeing how each person on this property has also recovered something precious, their dignity, their purpose, their voice." Martha, who followed them with the empty tray, wiped away a discreet tear. "The mansion has returned to being what it always should have been, a place of welcome and hope. The renovation of the annex was progressing rapidly. What had once been an abandoned space was transforming into a welcoming environment, with large windows that would allow future patients to contemplate the garden during their recovery sessions. Hannah personally supervised every detail, insisting that the space should convey hope from the moment people entered. The walls, once grey, now displayed soft shades of green and blue, colours that Tyler had suggested for their calming effect. Every element here should contribute to healing, Hannah explained to the architects, leaning on her cane as she walked through the space. From the natural lighting to the plants we'll place in each environment. And don't forget the access points to the garden, added Tyler, who accompanied her on the inspection. Patients need to feel they can easily reach the outdoors, even those with more reduced mobility. Dr. Richard, who had just arrived with another stack of files for future patients, smiled seeing Hannah's enthusiasm. You've transformed your experience into a project that will benefit so many people. It's because she understands, Tyler gently interrupted. She understands that healing isn't just physical. It's a journey that involves body, mind, and spirit. Hannah stopped in front of one of the windows, observing the garden outside. The rose bushes, now fully recovered, created a spectacle of colors that defied the gray of the approaching winter. Each person who comes here will have their own story, she said, turning to the group. Their own pain, their own fears. Our role isn't just to offer treatment, but also hope. Martha entered the annex, bringing news from the mansion. The movers have arrived, child. They're taking the last things from Mr. Vincent's room. A momentary silence fell over the group. The mention of Vincent's name still brought painful memories, but now they seemed more distant, like shadows dissipating with the rising sun. Transform his room into a music room, decided Hannah after a moment. Music has incredible healing power. I remember how my mother played piano on Sunday afternoons, filling the mansion with melodies that seemed to make the roses themselves dance. Tyler smiled, remembering. She had a special gift, not just for music, but for making everyone around her feel welcomed. How do you remember that? Asked Dr. Richard, curious. Tyler was practically family back then, explained Hannah, her eyes meeting his with affection, until Vincent appeared and began to poison everything with his manipulations and lies. But now the poison is gone, said Martha firmly, and the garden blooms stronger than before. Hannah walked to an area where physical therapy equipment would be installed. Her steps, still cautious but increasingly sure, echoed on the newly installed wooden floor. I want each person who passes through here to understand that they're not alone, she declared, her voice filled with conviction. That sometimes we need to lose everything to discover our true strength. And that there's always hope, completed Tyler, approaching her. Even when winter seems endless, spring always returns. The afternoon sun came through the windows, creating patterns of light on the floor that resembled rose petals. Outside, birds sang among the flowers, as if celebrating each small victory, each new beginning. Tomorrow we receive the first equipment, informed Dr. Richard, consulting his schedule. And next week, if all goes well, we can start with the first patients. Hannah nodded, feeling a mixture of anxiety and joy. Her own healing journey wasn't yet complete. There were days when her legs weakened, moments when memories of the accident tried to steal her peace. But now she understood that true healing wasn't in returning to what she was before, but in transforming her experience into something greater than herself. A gentle late winter breeze stirred the curtains in the main room of the newly inaugurated Rose Garden Rehabilitation Center. Hannah, wearing a light blue dress and leaning on her elegant cane, watched with emotion the movement of patients and therapists throughout the space. It's incredible how everything has changed in just 3 months, commented Dr. Richard, approaching with a clipboard in his hands. We already have 15 patients in treatment, and the results are surprising. Hannah smiled, observing a young woman practicing her first steps with Tyler's help. Each person here has their own story of overcoming. Like Claire over there, doctors said she would never move her legs again after the car accident. And now she can already take a few steps, completed Tyler, joining them after finishing the session with the patient. Like you, Hannah, She discovered that the limits imposed on us aren't always definitive. Martha hurriedly crossed the room, her face illuminated by a smile. "Child, the response from the medical board arrived. They officially approved our integrative techniques as a complementary treatment method." The news was received with joy by everyone present. It was the official recognition that was missing to legitimize the revolutionary work they were developing. The unique combination of traditional physical therapy with the body awareness and emotional healing techniques that Tyler had introduced. "This opens doors to expand the project," said Hannah, walking to one of the large windows overlooking the garden. "We can now share our methodology with other centers, reach more people." Outside, the garden was more beautiful than ever. The rose bushes, now fully recovered, created a spectacle of colors and aromas that served as inspiration for all patients. Among the flower beds, new paths had been built, suitable for wheelchairs and different levels of mobility. "I received news about Vincent," commented Tyler quietly, for only Hannah to hear. "The trial has been set for next month. The prosecution has a solid case." Hannah nodded, her face serene. "You know, I don't feel anger toward him anymore, just pity. He spent his life trying to control everything and everyone, and in the end, lost what really mattered, his humanity." "You've always had a generous heart," said Tyler, his blue eyes shining with admiration. "Even in the most difficult moments, you never allowed bitterness to consume you." A small commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. Claire, the young patient, was standing without support, taking her first steps completely alone. Tears of joy ran down her face as she advanced, trembling but determined. "I did it!" she exclaimed, laughing and crying at the same time. "Thanks to you all, I did it." Hannah approached her, also emotional. "No, Claire, you did it thanks to your own strength. We just showed the way, as Tyler did with me. And as the roses teach us every day," added Tyler. "Each flower has its own time to bloom. We can't rush the process, only create the ideal conditions for it to happen." Dr. Richard was making enthusiastic notes on his clipboard. "The results are even better than we expected. The combination of physical techniques with emotional work and connection with nature, it's revolutionary." "And this is just the beginning," said Hannah, her voice filled with determination. "Each person who recovers here takes with them not just physical healing, but a new understanding of themselves." Martha approached again, this time with an envelope in her hands. "Another letter arrived, child. It's from a rehabilitation center in New York. They want to learn about our work." Hannah took the envelope, feeling the weight of responsibility and joy it represented. What had begun as her personal healing journey was transforming into something much greater, a movement of hope and renewal that touched more and more lives. "You know what moves me most," she said, looking at the faces around her. "Seeing how each person who passes through here discovers their own inner strength. Like Claire today, it's not just the physical steps she conquered, but confidence in herself." Tyler smiled, completing her thought. "Because true healing begins when we understand that our limitations don't define us. They're just challenges to be overcome, like roses that find their way through the thorns." On the eve of the first graduation, at the rehabilitation center, Hannah was in her office organizing the certificates that would be presented to patients who had completed their recovery program. Each document represented a story of overcoming, a victory over limitations that seemed insurmountable. "You should be resting," said Tyler, entering the room with 2 cups of tea. "Tomorrow is a big day." Hannah gratefully accepted the cup, her smile revealing the fatigue and satisfaction of months of intense work. "I can't sleep. I keep thinking about how each of these people transformed their pain into strength, just as I did. Like Claire, who now helps train our new therapists," commented Tyler, sitting near the desk. "Or John, who returned to painting after years believing he would never hold a brush again." Through the open window came the fragrance of night roses, a rare species that Tyler had brought especially for the therapeutic garden. Their gentle aroma had a calming effect on patients during outdoor meditation sessions. "Sometimes I wonder what my parents would say if they could see all this," murmured Hannah, her gaze lost in the garden illuminated by the moon. "How we transformed, their home into a place of healing and hope. "They would be proud," replied Tyler with conviction, "especially to see how you've grown through adversity, how you've transformed your own experience into something that benefits so many people." Martha gently knocked on the door, bringing another stack of documents. "The last reports of the month, child. And there's one more thing." She hesitated, a mysterious smile on her lips. "A surprise for tomorrow." Hannah raised her eyebrows, curious. "What surprise?" "Oh, I can't tell," laughed Martha. "But it has to do with that special project that you and Tyler were planning." Tyler exchanged a knowing look with the housekeeper. "You'll find out at the right time. For now, you need to rest. Tomorrow will be an important day." Hannah stood up, putting the certificates in a special folder. Her movements were now fluid and secure, though she still kept the cane as occasional support, more by choice than necessity. "You know what moves me most?" she said, walking to the window. "Seeing how each person who passes through here discovers their own way of blossoming. Like the roses in the garden, each has its color, its fragrance, its time to bloom. And each contributes to the beauty of the whole," completed Tyler, joining her in contemplation of the nocturnal garden. "Just as each story of overcoming that happens here inspires new stories." Martha began collecting the empty cups, her face softened by the lamplight. "I remember the day Tyler appeared in the garden looking like a homeless man. Who would have thought that moment would change so many lives?" "It wasn't just my appearance that changed things," Tyler gently corrected. "It was Hannah's courage to trust, to allow herself to believe again, to transform her pain into a greater purpose." Hannah turned to the two, her eyes shining with contained tears. "You are my family. Everyone here, the patients, the therapists, each person who contributes to this work. Together, we've created something that goes beyond physical rehabilitation. We've created a place where people rediscover their essence." From the garden came the soft sound of wind among the rose bushes and the occasional hoot of an owl. It was as if nature itself were preparing for the next day's celebration, a moment that would mark not only the physical recovery of patients, but the rebirth of their hopes and dreams. "Tomorrow," said Hannah, her voice filled with emotion, "we'll celebrate not just individual achievements, but the power of collective transformation. Each person who graduates takes with them a part of this garden, a seed of hope to plant wherever they go." Tyler smiled, his gaze reflecting the moonlight. And so the miracle multiplies, like roses that spread their seeds to the wind, creating new gardens in unexpected places. The day of graduation dawned with an extraordinarily blue sky. The mansion's garden had been decorated with white and gold ribbons that danced in the gentle morning breeze. White chairs were arranged in a semicircle in front of a small stage, with the rose bushes providing a perfect, natural backdrop for the celebration. Hannah was in her room putting the final touches on her emerald green dress. Her hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from contained emotion. Martha helped with the final details, her eyes moist with pride. "You look beautiful, child," said the housekeeper, adjusting the pearl necklace that had belonged to Hannah's mother, "like a queen in her garden." A soft knock on the door announced Tyler's arrival. He entered, elegant in his navy blue suit, carrying a bouquet of white and pink roses. "These are the first roses from the special bed," he explained, presenting the bouquet to Hannah. "The one we planted with seeds from the four corners of the world." Hannah inhaled the delicate perfume of the flowers, each with its own story, like our patients. Outside, animated voices began to fill the garden. The graduates were arriving with their families, many walking on their own, others still using supports, but all carrying on their faces the mark of victory over their limitations. "It's time," announced Martha, discreetly wiping away a tear. Hannah looked at herself one last time in the mirror. Her reflection showed not just the physical recovery, but a deeper transformation, a serenity and strength that came from within. In the garden, Claire coordinated the reception of guests. She, who months before could barely stand, now moved, gracefully among those present, helping to accommodate everyone in their places. "Hannah," she called upon, seeing her mentor approaching. "You need to see this." Claire led Hannah to a side area of the garden where an exhibition had been set up. On improvised walls, dozens of photographs told the story of the rehabilitation center, from the first days of renovation to the most recent moments. In each image, smiling faces, tears of joy, victory embraces. "This is the surprise we prepared," explained Claire. "Each patient contributed their memories, their stories. It's our gift to you." Hannah scanned the photographs with moist eyes. There was John proudly showing his first painting after regaining hand movements, Anna taking her first steps after the accident, Peter returning to playing guitar. Each image, a story of rebirth. "And there's more," said Tyler, guiding her to the end of the exhibition. On the last wall, a series of old photographs had been restored, images of the garden in its initial days of glory, with Hannah's parents tending the rose bushes. And among them, photos of Hannah as a child, learning about the flowers with Tyler. "We found these photos in your father's old studio," explained Tyler. "Martha kept them all these years." "To remember that all this," said Martha, approaching, "began with love. Your parents' love for this garden, Tyler's love for the knowledge he shared, and your love, Hannah, that transformed pain into healing." Dr. Richard appeared, indicating it was time to start the ceremony. Hannah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Before we go," said Tyler, gently holding her arm, "I want you to see one last thing." He led her to a small pedestal covered with a silk cloth. Upon removing it, he revealed a bronze plaque that read, "Rose Garden Center for Rehabilitation and Rebirth, in memory of Andrew and Laura Miller, who taught us that love is the greatest healing force." Hannah touched the plaque with trembling fingers, feeling the texture of the engraved letters. "It's perfect," she whispered. The sound of soft music began to play, signaling the start of the ceremony. Hannah straightened her shoulders, held her bouquet more firmly, and, alongside Tyler, walked towards the stage. Each step was a celebration, each movement proof that miracles happen not just once but multiply when shared with love and hope. The garden was filled with people, all united by the same journey of overcoming and rebirth. Hannah, standing on the small stage, observed the faces before her, each carrying their own story of struggle and victory. "When I began my recovery journey," she started her speech, her voice clear and emotional, "I believed I was alone. The mansion walls seemed like a prison, and my wheelchair a definitive sentence." A gentle breeze stirred the rose bushes, scattering petals over those present like a natural blessing. But then, on a day that seemed like all others, something changed. A stranger appeared in our abandoned garden, someone who, as I discovered, later wasn't a stranger at all, but a fundamental part of my past, returning at the exact moment I needed most. Tyler, seated in the front row, smiled gently. Beside him, Martha discreetly wiped tears with an embroidered handkerchief. "What I learned on this journey," continued Hannah, "is that true healing goes far beyond the physical. Each person here present discovered this in their own way, like Claire, who not only recovered her movements, but rediscovered her vocation to help others." Claire, now one of the center's therapists, waved emotionally from her position among the graduates. Or like John, who transformed his limitations into art, proving that creativity always finds a way to express itself. John proudly raised the brush. He held his personal symbol of victory. "This center was born from a shared dream," Hannah continued. "A dream of transforming pain into hope, limitations into possibilities. Each rose that blooms in this garden represents a life that chose not to be defined by its circumstances." Dr. Richard approached the stage, bringing the certificates. One by one, the graduates were called. Each person who stood to receive their diploma represented a unique story of perseverance and overcoming. "But our journey doesn't end here," said Hannah, after the certificates were handed out. "Each of you takes with you a seed from this garden, not just in your hearts, but also literally." Martha and Tyler began distributing small packets of rose seeds, specially prepared for the occasion. These seeds are a symbol of what happens here. Just as roses spread by the wind, bringing life to new places, each of you leaves here as a messenger of hope. Your stories will inspire others. Your victories will illuminate paths. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the tree canopies, creating golden patterns over the garden. It was as if nature itself participated in the celebration, blessing each person present with its soft light. And now, Hannah paused, her eyes shining, I have one last surprise to share. She gave a signal, and Tyler joined her on the stage. The Rose Garden Rehabilitation Center will no longer be unique. Starting next month, we will begin an expansion program. We will take our methodology to other cities, other gardens, other lives that need to discover their own strength. A murmur of excitement ran through the audience. Claire was the first to stand, applauding, quickly followed by all those present. Because we have learned, concluded Hannah, her voice full of emotion, that true miracles don't happen to us, but through us. Each person here is living proof of this. Each story of overcoming, each smile regained, each step taken. All these are seeds of hope that will continue to bloom in places we cannot even imagine. The applause echoed through the garden, mingling with the birdsong and the soft rustling of the rose bushes. Hannah looked at Tyler, who smiled proudly at her side, at Martha, who openly cried with joy, at each face in the audience that reflected the same certainty, that miracles like roses have the power to multiply infinitely when cultivated with love and hope. The sunset painted the sky in rosy hues as the last guests left the celebration. Hannah and Tyler walked slowly through the garden, collecting memories of the special day that was coming to an end. The distant sound of laughter and farewells echoed across the property. You've accomplished more than you thought possible, said Tyler, stopping near the old well where everything had begun. You've transformed not just your life, but that of so many people. Hannah leaned down to touch a newly bloomed rose. We accomplished it together, Tyler. You taught me that true healing comes from within, but you also showed me that we don't need to walk that path alone. Martha approached, carrying a small carved wooden box. I found this in your father's old office, child. I think now is the right time to open it. Hannah took the box with trembling hands. The wood was worn by time, but the rose carving was still visible on the lid. Inside, she found a yellowed envelope and a small diary. It's my father's handwriting, she whispered, carefully opening the envelope. My dear Hannah, if you're reading this letter, it means you found your way back to the light, even through the densest shadows. Tyler promised me he would take care of you, that he would help you rediscover your strength when the time was right. This garden was always more than a place of beauty. It's a testament that life finds its way even in the most adverse circumstances. Like the roses your mother loved so much, you too have blossomed through the thorns. The diary that accompanies this letter contains all the secrets of the garden, not just about the roses, but about the art of cultivating hope. Use it to continue the work that has begun. Transform this place into a beacon of light for others who, like you, need to rediscover their own healing power. We're proud of you, my daughter. We always have been. With eternal love, Dad. Hannah felt tears in her eyes as she leafed through the diary, page after page of notes about the roses, detailed drawings of each species, observations about their growth cycles and healing properties. Your father knew, said Tyler softly. He knew that one day you would transform this garden into something greater than all of us. Martha, who was watching the scene with emotion, pointed to the horizon. Look. In the sky, a rainbow was forming, its vibrant colors arching over the garden like a natural blessing. The last drops of a light rain that had fallen during the celebration sparkled on the rose petals, like small diamonds. It's a sign, smiled Hannah, carefully putting the letter and diary back in the box, that we're on the right path. Tyler approached, gently taking her hand. And which path shall we follow now? Hannah looked around, at the garden that had been reborn, at the rehabilitation center that was transforming lives, at the people who had become her family. We'll continue planting hope, she replied with conviction. One garden at a time, one life at a time. And the roses? Asked Martha, a knowing smile on her lips. The roses, said Hannah, touching a petal with affection, will continue teaching us their most precious lessons about resilience, about beauty born from adversity, about the power to bloom even after the harshest winter. The sun was setting on the horizon, But the garden seemed to shine with its own light, the light of transformation, of healing, of renewed hope. It was the end of one cycle and the beginning of another, like the roses themselves in their eternal dance between dormancy and blooming. A year passed since the first graduation at the Rose Garden Rehabilitation Center. The mansion, once silent and somber, now pulsed with life and hope. The expansion project had flourished beyond expectations. 3 new centers had been inaugurated in different cities, each with its own rose garden. Hannah was in her office, reviewing reports from the new centers, when Tyler entered bringing special news. Vincent's last appeal was denied, he announced. The sentence was upheld. He will spend the next years reflecting on his actions. Hannah nodded serenely. I hope he finds peace, Tyler. The true prison isn't the bars, but the walls we build in our hearts. Martha hurriedly entered, carrying an official envelope. Child, the international certification has arrived. The Rose Garden method has been recognized as complementary therapy by the World Health Organization. The news was received with smiles of satisfaction. The work they had developed, combining traditional physical therapy with Tyler's techniques and garden therapy, was finally receiving global recognition. Let's celebrate in the garden, suggested Hannah, rising with the natural grace of someone who rediscovered the pleasure of moving freely. In the garden, Claire was conducting a therapy session with a group of new patients. Under her gentle guidance, they were learning to reconnect with their bodies through caring for the flowers. See how each rose finds its own path toward the sun, she explained. Our bodies have the same natural wisdom. We just need to relearn how to listen to them. Hannah, Tyler, and Martha observed the scene with pride. The method they had developed went beyond physical recovery. It was a journey of reconnection with one's essence. You know what moves me most, said Hannah, watching the patients working in the garden. Seeing how each person who passes through here takes with them more than physical recovery, they take a complete transformation. Tyler smiled, his blue eyes shining with the same wisdom that had captivated her since their first meeting. Because you understood the true essence of healing, it's not just about fixing what's broken, but about awakening the healing power that exists within each one. Martha, who was returning from inside the house with a tea tray, added, and now that wisdom spreads, like the seeds of roses in the wind. The afternoon sun bathed the garden in a golden light, making the roses appear even more vibrant. Each bed told a story. The white roses that Hannah and Tyler had planted together at their first meeting. The red roses that marked the spot where she had taken her first steps after the accident. The pink roses that patients cultivated as part of their therapy. It's amazing to think, reflected Hannah, how it all began with a seemingly casual encounter in an abandoned garden. There are no coincidences, replied Tyler, intertwining his fingers with hers. Just right moments for each flower to bloom. A group of butterflies danced among the rose bushes, their colorful wings adding more beauty to the scene. It was as if nature itself was celebrating the transformation that had happened in that place. And our story? Asked Martha, a knowing smile on her lips. Hannah looked at Tyler, then at the garden full of life, at the patients finding their own strength through the roses. Our story is like this garden, always growing, always blooming. Each new person who arrives here adds a new chapter, a new color, a new miracle. And the future? Questioned Tyler. The future, smiled Hannah, is like an eternal spring. As long as there are hearts willing to believe, hands willing to care, and souls willing to bloom, our garden will continue growing, inspiring and healing.